number 6. Alright, so in this question we're asked, what is a real root? So real roots are those real numbers that are a solution to a given equation. For example, given this quadratic expression, and we find the roots here. So the real root here is 1. So whenever you have a quadratic expression, usually you think about them as roots, but the full term for it is a real root, mainly because there's no imaginary component. So if you look at the example given, so we have x squared minus 2x plus 1. Let me actually erase this, I'll write that a little clearer. X plus 1. You want to factor this out to find the roots. So looking at this, what I do when I try to look at this expression, I think about, okay, what can I well, this is actually a special case. This is a perfect square, mainly because you can see over here it's x minus 1, x minus 1. So what I think about when I'm doing this is these are small kind of numbers. We have the coefficient 2 here, so I'll circle that in red. This coefficient and this coefficient, and we also have a 1 in the front, so that's another thing to think about, but really we're only looking at the other two coefficients. And you want to think about, okay, if I have the last number as 1, the last two terms, so here x could be plus or minus, should be equal to 1. So this number, -1, times -1 would give us 1. So we don't know necessarily if it's negative or positive. We can also have +1 times +1, it also gives us 1. So that's also an option. But that's where this term over here comes into play. So -2, okay, the other step that you got to go through is, okay, this term and this term added together, what does that give us? So -1 plus -1 gives us -2. If they were positive, +1 plus +1 would be +2, and that's where this kind of doesn't hold true anymore. And we end up with this, so this is equal to 0 over here. And when we're at this stage, so this is just a perfect square, so this could also be represented as x minus 1 squared. Essentially, we know we just set the stuff in the brackets to 0, so we have x minus 1, set that to 0, and then solve for x, so that's x equals to 1. And that's our root, so that's x, the first root, and then the second root is the same because we know it's also x minus 1. But essentially this is a real root because we're able to factor this out, and we're able to get these two separate expressions, and we're able to solve. So if we're able to go through this process regardless of what the initial quadratic expression is and find real roots, so real numbers, there's no situation where you end up having to square root a negative number, then you know these are real numbers, real roots. They become imaginary roots when you start square rooting a negative number. So if you have to square root -2 or any other negative number, then that becomes an imaginary root. But in this situation, that's not the case, and we end up with real roots. So correct answer. Great job. Mark this as correct and move on to the next question.